He just wanted a peaceful walk in the woods, until he heard a faint meow among the leaves. What seemed like a simple rescue changed his life forever. Mysterious symbols, invisible gifts, and a secret pact with nature began to unfold. Subscribe now to discover this incredible story. The faint sound of a mule broke the silence of the forest on that cold autumn afternoon. During his routine walk along the wooded trails surrounding his property, Ethan Mitchell, a retiree who had traded the hustle and bustle of the city for the serenity of the countryside in northern Montana, found a small lynx cub nestled among the dry leaves. The animal, shivering from the cold and visibly blind, was struggling to stay alive. Overcome with immediate compassion, Ethan wrapped the cub in his jacket and took it home, improvising a heated bed by the fireplace of his rustic cabin. The night passed in silence, except for the brief sighs of the animal, and Ethan, still moved by the emotion of the rescue, fell asleep in a nearby chair, his weathered hands occasionally reaching out to ensure the tiny creature was still breathing. Next morning, however, when he opened the back door, what he saw made his heart race. A dozen other adult lynxes, majestic and imposing, were scattered around his yard, looking directly at him. Among them, a light-coated female seemed to stand, out with attentive eyes that, despite the distance, seemed full of intention. Her piercing gaze reached into Ethan's soul, as if she knew exactly who he was and what he had done. Confused, Ethan stepped back, but noticed that none of the animals showed aggression. On the contrary, they remained motionless, as if waiting for something. When he brought the cub to the doorstep, the female advanced with cautious steps and began to emit a soft sound, almost a chant, which made the cub tremble with recognition. Taken by a sudden decision, he placed the cub on the ground. The mother approached slowly, touching her muzzle to the small body, enveloping it with protective warmth. Ethan, with tears in his eyes, watched the reunion without understanding how so many lynxes had found his home, hidden as it was among the dense trees of the Montana wilderness. That afternoon, when he returned from the village market, he found something even more surprising. On the doorstep where he had previously left the cub, there was a pile of carefully stacked leaves, forming what appeared to be a symbol. On top of it rested a small, hand-carved wooden amulet with the figure of a lynx. It was as if the forest had sent a silent thank you, a token of gratitude from creatures he had believed incapable of such gestures. "Well, I'll be damned," Ethan whispered, picking up the amulet with careful fingers. He turned it over in his palm, marveling at the intricate details. Whoever or whatever had carved it possessed skill beyond anything he'd ever seen. Intrigued, Ethan began to notice subtle changes around his property. Rare herbs began to grow in the garden. Exotic birds began to visit the area, and the well water became even more crystalline. Each week, small natural gifts appeared near the house: flowers, polished stones, colorful feathers, as if an invisible force was reciprocating his kindness. The people of Pinecrest Valley, the small village 15 miles from Ethan's cabin, were accustomed to stories of ancient pacts with nature. Some of the older ladies said he had been chosen by the spirits of the forest. Others just smiled and recommended that he keep his heart open. But Ethan, who had moved to Montana after retiring from his architectural firm in Chicago following his wife Sarah's long battle with illness, had never been one for superstition. Jessica Randall, the local veterinarian who occasionally stopped by to check on the injured wildlife Ethan found during his walks, noticed the changes too. "There's something different about this place, Ethan," she remarked one evening as they sat on his porch, sipping coffee as the sun dipped behind the mountains. "The air feels charged, and I've never seen so many lynx in one area before. They're typically solitary creatures." Ethan nodded, his gaze drifting to the tree line where even now he could make out the glimmer of watchful eyes. "Ever since I found that cub, nothing's been the same. It's like Like what? Jessica leaned forward, her auburn hair catching. The last golden rays of sunlight, like they're watching over me, he finished, feeling foolish for voicing the thought aloud. Ridiculous, I know. Jessica didn't laugh as he expected. Instead, she followed his gaze to the forest edge. My grandmother was part Blackfeet. She always said that when an animal chooses you, it's forming a bond that transcends understanding. She paused, as if deciding whether to continue. There are legends in these parts, stories about the spirits of the land forming connections with certain people. Ethan might have dismissed such talk a year ago, back when his life was governed by blueprints and client meetings. But now, after spending months in this remote corner of Montana, he found himself more open to possibilities that defied explanation. One day, during an unexpected storm, a huge oak tree fell just yards from the house. When Ethan ran to check, he saw that the split trunk revealed a cavity filled with small carved wooden figures, all representing lynxes in various poses. It was as if, long before him, that place had already been a silent sanctuary. Hands trembling, he reached into the hollow and extracted one of the figures. It was ancient, the wood darkened with age, but the craftsmanship was undeniable. The lynx was depicted mid-leap, its muscles tense, its expression one of fierce determination. It matched the amulet he'd found on his doorstep perfectly. "What is this place?" he whispered to the empty forest. But the only answer was the gentle rustling of leaves. That night, Ethan dreamed of running through the forest on 4 legs. His senses heightened, every scent and sound amplified beyond human comprehension. He awoke with a start, his heart racing, the memory of freedom still coursing through his veins. The following morning, Jessica arrived with supplies. She'd heard about the fallen oak from one of the locals who'd passed by Ethan's property. Her eyes widened when he showed her the collection of carved figures. "Do you know what these are?" she asked, handling them with reverence. Ethan shook his head. "These are totems, protective symbols. My grandmother had one similar to this, passed down through generations." She looked up at him, her expression serious. "Ethan, this isn't coincidence. Your land, this cabin, it sits on what must have been sacred ground." To whom?" he asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "To the guardians," she replied simply, "to those who walk between worlds." As Jessica spoke, a movement at the window caught Ethan's attention. The light-coated female lynx stood just outside, her golden eyes fixed on them. And beside her, alert and poised, despite his blindness, was the cub Ethan had saved, now grown considerably. "They've accepted you," Jessica whispered, following his gaze. "But the question is, will you accept them?" Ethan's life would never be the same again. Without ever capturing or domesticating any animal, he naturally became the invisible guardian of a territory that, before, belonged only to nature. The trust between him and the animals grew, and on many evenings it was possible to see him sitting on the porch, while in the distance bright eyes observed him in a silent vigil of respect and gratitude. But the greatest gift came later. One dawn, while walking along the trail where he had found the blind cub, Ethan encountered an entire litter of lynx cubs playing freely. Among them, the cub he had saved, now grown, led the play, guiding his siblings with impressive dexterity, as if his blindness had sharpened invisible abilities. The cycle of kindness had closed perfectly. An unpretentious action had sown something much greater, a silent, eternal alliance between a man and the secret guardians of the forest. As he watched the playful scene before him, Ethan felt a presence beside him. Turning slightly, he found Jessica standing there, a look of wonder on her face. "Now do you believe?" she asked softly. Ethan nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. For so long after Sarah's passing, he'd felt alone in the world, adrift without purpose. Now somehow he'd found connection in the most unexpected place. They need protection, he said finally. Developers have been eyeing this valley for years, if they push through with their plans. Jessica placed a hand on his arm. Then we'll fight for them, together. Their eyes met, and something shifted between them, a recognition perhaps of shared purpose, of possibility. In the clearing, the blind lynx turned its head toward them, as if sensing their resolve. And in that moment, Ethan knew that he had found not just a cause, but a new beginning. What he couldn't know was that the forest had much more to reveal, secrets that would test his newfound alliance and force him to confront truths about himself and the land he now called home. The lynx amulet around his neck seemed to grow warmer, a silent promise of adventures yet to come. The news spread through Pinecrest Valley like wildfire. Westridge Development Corporation had submitted plans to the county for a luxury resort spanning 500 acres, including the forest surrounding Ethan's property. Within days, a town meeting was called. The tiny community center packed to capacity with concerned residents. Ethan sat in the back row, the lynx amulet a reassuring weight against his chest. Beside him, Jessica fidgeted with her notebook, jotting down potential arguments against the development. They can't just bulldoze protected habitats, she whispered, fiercely. There are endangered species in those woods. Can they prove it? Ethan asked, keeping his voice low. Without documentation, the developers will claim there's nothing worth preserving. Before Jessica could respond, Robert Caldwell, Pinecrest's mayor and owner of the local hardware store, called the meeting to order. A man in an expensive suit was introduced as Gregory Walsh, representative for Westridge Development. Ladies and gentlemen, Walsh began, his practiced smile never reaching his eyes. I'm here to share an exciting opportunity for Pinecrest Valley. Our proposed Mountain Pines Resort will bring jobs, tourism, and prosperity to your community. Digital renderings appeared on the projector screen. Gleaming buildings nestled among cleared forest, a golf course stretching across what Ethan recognized as Lynx territory, and luxury cabins dotting the landscape. We're committed to environmentally responsible development, Walsh continued smoothly. Our plans include green building practices and preservation of 30% of the existing forest. Only 30%? Jessica stood abruptly. That's not preservation, that's devastation. Those woods are home to diverse wildlife, including protected species. Walsh's smile tightened. We've conducted thorough environmental assessments. While there is wildlife present, nothing endangered was documented in the proposed construction areas. Because you weren't looking properly, Jessica retorted. I'm a veterinarian, and I've treated several species in those woods that are on the Montana Species of Concern list. Do you have documentation? Walsh challenged. Jessica hesitated. Not formal studies, but then I'm afraid anecdotal evidence won't hold up against our professional surveys, Walsh said dismissively. Ethan rose to his feet, surprising himself. Public speaking had never been his forte, but something powerful was stirring within him. The forest isn't just trees and animals, it's an ecosystem, a delicate balance. My property borders the proposed development, and I've seen firsthand the richness of life there. Mr. Mitchell, isn't it? Walsh consulted. His notes. Our plans actually include an offer to purchase your land at well above market value. You'd be compensated generously. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ethan felt all eyes turn to him. In a town where many struggled financially, turning down such an offer seemed foolish. The land isn't for sale, Ethan stated firmly. And if you'd spent any real time in those woods, you'd understand why. As the meeting continued, positions hardened on both sides. Many residents welcomed the prospect of jobs. Others feared the irreversible change to their quiet community. By the time it ended, one thing was clear. Westridge Development was moving forward, with county approval likely unless compelling evidence against the project emerged. Outside the community center, Jessica's shoulders slumped in defeat. We need documented proof of endangered species. Without it, we don't stand a chance. Ethan stared into the distance, where the mountains loomed dark against the twilight sky. Then we'll get it. I have trail cameras at my cabin. We can set them up throughout the woods, capture the lynx and other wildlife. That could take months, Ethan. The county vote is in 6 weeks. Then we have 6 weeks to convince them. He touched the amulet gently, and I think we might have help. That night, as Ethan checked his cameras before bed, he noticed movement outside his window. The female lynx, he'd taken to calling her Luna for her pale coat that seemed to glow in moonlight, stood on his porch, watching him with unnerving intelligence. "We need your help," he said softly, not feeling foolish for speaking to her. "They want to destroy your home. Our home." Luna blinked slowly, then turned and bounded into the darkness. Ethan wasn't sure what he'd expected, certainly not for a wild animal to understand human speech, but disappointment settled heavily in his chest nonetheless. The next morning, he found another gift on his doorstep. A perfectly preserved eagle feather laid atop a bed of herbs he didn't recognize. Puzzled, he brought it inside just as Jessica's truck rumbled up the drive. "Found something interesting," she announced, brandishing a folder. "Historical documents from the county archives. This entire area was considered sacred ground by the Blackfeet tribe. There might be cultural protection laws we can leverage." Ethan showed her the feather and herbs. "Luna left these?" Jessica examined them carefully. Eagle feathers are powerful symbols in many native traditions. And these plants? She rubbed a leaf between her fingers, sniffed it. "This is osha root. It's used in protective rituals." "You think she's trying to tell us something?" "I think," Jessica said slowly, "that we're not alone in this fight." Over the next weeks, Ethan and Jessica worked tirelessly. They set up cameras, documented wildlife, researched cultural preservation laws, and rallied support in the community. To Ethan's amazement, the lynxes seemed to cooperate, appearing regularly on camera, sometimes staring directly into the lens as if posing intentionally. Other animals began to show up too. Wolves, bears, rare birds, even a wolverine, all species that would strengthen their case against development. It was as if the forest itself was revealing its treasures to be saved. Meanwhile, strange occurrences continued around Ethan's cabin. Herbs with protective properties sprouted along his property line. The well water developed mineral properties that Jessica confirmed had healing qualities. And most remarkably, the blind lynx cub, now nearly full-grown and dubbed Scout by Ethan, began to leave tracks in perfect circles around the property, an impossible pattern for random movement. One evening, as they reviewed their evidence, at Ethan's kitchen table, Jessica looked up from her laptop with excitement. "We might have enough." The combination of the wildlife documentation and the historical significance could sway the county commissioners. Ethan nodded, but his attention was drawn to the window, where an unusual fog had begun to gather, despite the clear night. "Jessica, look at this." They stepped onto the porch, watching as the mist thickened and swirled, forming shapes that seemed almost human before dissolving again. The temperature dropped suddenly, their breath visible in the chill air. "What's happening?" Jessica whispered, instinctively moving closer to Ethan. Before he could respond, the mist parted, revealing a pathway leading into the woods. At its entrance stood Luna and Scout, waiting expectantly. "I think," Ethan said, taking Jessica's hand, "we're being invited somewhere. Should we follow?" Ethan touched the amulet, which seemed to pulse warmly against his skin. Yes. Hand in hand, they followed the lynxes into the misty forest. The familiar trail transformed into something otherworldly. Neither spoke as they walked, sensing the solemnity of the moment. The mist thickened around them, and yet somehow they could see clearly, guided by an inner knowing rather than physical sight. After what seemed both minutes and hours, they emerged into a clearing Ethan had never seen before, despite his countless explorations of the woods. At its center stood an ancient oak tree, far larger than any in the region, its massive trunk split open to reveal a hollow interior glowing with soft blue light. Surrounding the tree in a perfect circle were dozens of animals, not just lynxes, but wolves, bears, eagles, and creatures Ethan couldn't name, all standing in silent vigil. Luna approached the tree, then turned to look at them. "I think we're supposed to go to the tree," Jessica murmured, her scientific skepticism seemingly forgotten in the face of the impossible scene before them. As they approached, the blue light intensified. Ethan felt a humming vibration through the soles of his boots, a resonance that seemed to connect him to the earth beneath his feet. Together, they peered into the hollow. Inside, nestled in what appeared to be centuries of accumulated leaves and earth, lay hundreds of wooden carvings. Lynxes, bears, eagles, all perfectly crafted, all ancient. "A sacred repository," Jessica breathed. "These must be hundreds of years old." Ethan reached out, drawn by an irresistible pull, and touched one of the lynx carvings. Instantly, a vision flashed through his mind. A Blackfeet man, hands weathered by time, carving the totem while animals watched from the forest edge. The vision shifted, showing the same location through different eras, always protected, always revered, until European settlers arrived and the knowledge was lost. But not completely forgotten. The animals had remembered, they had waited, and now they had chosen a new guardian. Ethan withdrew his hand, gasping. "I saw. I think I understand now." Jessica, who had touched a carving herself, nodded wordlessly, tears streaming down her face. "This is what we needed," Ethan said finally. "Not just evidence of animals to protect, but proof of cultural heritage. These artifacts must be hundreds of years old." "The county can't ignore this," Jessica agreed. "No developer can legally destroy a site of this significance." As they stood in wonder, Scout approached, carrying something in his mouth. He dropped it at Ethan's feet, a small, freshly carved wooden figure of a man and woman standing together, unmistakably representations of Ethan and Jessica. "How is this possible?" Jessica whispered, picking up the carving with trembling hands. Ethan looked around at the gathered animals, at the ancient tree, at the mist that continued to swirl with purpose at the edges of the clearing. "I think we've been asking the wrong questions. It's not about what's possible, but what's real, and this," he gestured around them, "is the most real thing I've ever experienced." As if in response, the mist began to coalesce, forming into the translucent shape of a Native American man dressed in traditional Blackfeet attire. Though Ethan could see through the figure to the trees beyond, the details were crisp. The lines on his face, the feathers in his hair, the tools at his belt, including a small carving knife. "Guardian," the figure said, his voice like rustling leaves. "You have been chosen." The words hung in the air, both a statement and a question. Ethan felt Jessica's hand tighten around his, drawing strength from her presence. "Chosen for what?" Ethan asked, his voice steady despite the impossible nature of the conversation. The figure smiled, gesturing to the animals, to the tree, to the land around them. "To remember, to protect, to continue what was started long ago." "The development," Jessica interjected, "we can stop it with what we've found here." The spirit nodded. "That is but the first test. There will be others. The balance must be maintained." Before Ethan could ask more, the figure began to fade, his final words lingering in the air. "The forest has chosen you, but you must also choose the forest." As the spirit disappeared, the mist receded, revealing the clearing in ordinary moonlight. The animals remained watching, waiting for Ethan's response. The county commissioners sat in stunned silence as Jessica concluded her presentation. The community hall, packed with Pinecrest residents and media, buzzed with whispers as she displayed photographs of the sacred repository and the ancient artifacts they had discovered. These carvings have been carbon dated to approximately 500 years ago, she explained, her voice steady with newfound confidence. The University of Montana's anthropology department has confirmed their authenticity and cultural significance to the Blackfeet people. Ethan, seated in the front row, felt the weight of the Lynx amulet against his chest. Since that night in the misty clearing 2 weeks ago, it had rarely felt cool to the touch, instead maintaining a subtle warmth that seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. Commissioner Eleanor Watts, a stern woman with silver hair pulled into a tight bun, leaned forward. "And you're claiming this site is on the exact land West Ridge development plans to clear for their resort?" "Not claiming, Commissioner, proving." Jessica clicked to the next slide, a topographical map overlaid with GPS coordinates. "Here's the location of the sacred tree, and here," she traced a red line, "is the planned location for the main lodge. They would literally be building on top of a cultural heritage site that's protected under both state and federal law." Gregory Walsh, the West Ridge representative, shot to his feet. "This is preposterous. We conducted thorough surveys of that land. There were no archaeological findings of significance." "Did you look inside a hollow tree that can only be found when the forest decides to reveal it?" The question came not from Jessica or Ethan, but from William Blackhawk, a Blackfeet elder who had traveled from the reservation after hearing about their discovery. His weathered face remained impassive as all eyes turned to him. Walsh sputtered, That's nonsense. Forests don't decide anything." "Perhaps that is why you did not find what has been there for centuries," William replied calmly. "My people have stories of the guardian spirits of these forests, stories of sacred places that appear only to those chosen to protect them." Commissioner Watts tapped her gavel lightly. "Mr. Blackhawk, while we respect your cultural perspective, this commission must deal in verifiable facts." "The artifacts are verifiable facts," Ethan interjected, rising to stand beside Jessica, "as are the endangered species we've documented throughout the proposed development area." He nodded to Jessica, who clicked to a new series of slides showing clear images of lynxes, wolves, and a wolverine, all captured by their trail cameras. "Remarkable footage," Commissioner James Holloway commented, leaning forward with interest. "Particularly that lynx with the clouded eyes. Is it blind?" "Yes," Ethan confirmed. "I found him as a cub last autumn, nearly frozen to death. After I nursed him back to health, his mother came to retrieve him. Despite his blindness, he's thriving in the wild." Walsh rolled his eyes. "A heartwarming story, but hardly relevant to land use decisions." "On the contrary," Jessica countered, "it demonstrates the unique ecosystem at work in these woods. This blind lynx shouldn't be able to survive in the wild, and yet he's flourishing, hunting, navigating difficult terrain, even leading other lynxes. Something extraordinary is happening in this forest, something worth preserving." For 3 hours, the hearing continued, with experts from both sides presenting arguments. The university anthropologist confirmed the artifact's significance. Blackfeet tribal representatives spoke about the cultural importance of the site. Environmental scientists highlighted the unusual concentration of wildlife and rare plant species. Through it all, Ethan felt a strange sense of calm. Whatever the commissioners decided, he knew the truth. The forest had chosen him, and he had chosen the forest. There would be no turning back. Finally, after a brief deliberation, Commissioner Watts delivered their decision. In light of the substantial evidence presented today regarding both the cultural significance of the site and the environmental concerns, This commission is issuing a temporary injunction against any development in the proposed area until a full archaeological and environmental survey can be conducted. Cheers erupted from the Pinecrest residence while Walsh furiously gathered his papers, already on his phone with what Ethan presumed were Westridge attorneys. As the crowd dispersed, William Blackhawk approached Ethan and Jessica. "You have done well," the elder said, his dark eyes studying Ethan intently. "But this is only the beginning of your journey as guardian." "You know about that?" Ethan asked, surprised. William's smile deepened the lines around his eyes. "My grandfather was the previous guardian, though the gift passed out of our family when he departed this world. We wondered when the forest would choose again." He nodded, toward the amulet visible at Ethan's throat. "That was his," Jessica gasped softly. "But how did it?" "The ways of the spirits are not for us to question," William interrupted gently, "but I would speak with you both further. There is much you should know." Later that evening, the three sat around Ethan's fireplace, steam rising from mugs of tea made from herbs William had brought. Outside, a gentle snow fell, the first of the season, blanketing the forest in white silence. "The relationship between my people and the spirits of this land goes back countless generations," William explained. "There have always been guardians, those chosen to maintain the balance between the human and natural worlds. Sometimes the guardian was a tribal member, sometimes not. The spirits choose based on the heart, not bloodlines." "What exactly is expected of a guardian?" Ethan asked, absently touching the amulet. "To listen, to protect, to remember and pass on the old ways." William sipped his tea. "The greatest threat to the spirits is not development or destruction, but forgetting. When humans forget their connection to the natural world, the veil between realms thickens." "Realms?" Jessica leaned forward. William nodded. "The physical world we inhabit and the spirit world that exists alongside it. In ancient times there was no separation. Humans, animals, spirits moved freely between realms. But as humans turned away from nature, built walls and cities, the realms began to separate. And the sacred tree, it's what? A doorway?" Ethan asked. "More like a meeting place," William corrected. "A thin spot where the realms touch. There are others throughout these mountains, but that one is special. It is where the first agreement was made between my ancestors and the animal spirits." "The carved figures," Jessica realized. "They're not just art. They're some kind of contract?" William smiled approvingly. "Each totem represents a promise, a bond. By caring for them, the guardian maintains those ancient agreements." The conversation continued deep into the night. William sharing stories and knowledge passed down through generations. He taught them words in the Blackfeet language to address the spirits, explained the significance of the plants growing around Ethan's property, and described rituals to honor the changing seasons. As William prepared to leave the next morning, he pressed something into Ethan's palm, a small leather pouch containing sacred herbs. "When you need guidance, burn these at the sacred tree and listen." His eyes shifted to Jessica, who stood nearby. "The spirits have chosen both of you, though in different ways. The guardian rarely walks alone." After William departed, Jessica turned to Ethan, snow melting in her auburn hair. "What do we do now?" Ethan smiled, taking her hand. "Now we wait for the next test." They didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to Ethan's cabin. A woman in an expensive suit emerged, introducing herself as Victoria Chambers, Senior Vice President of Westridge Development. "Mr. Mitchell," she began without preamble, "I'll be direct. Westridge is prepared to offer you $5 million for your property and an additional $3 million if you publicly retract your statements about the cultural significance of the site." Ethan blinked, momentarily stunned by the figure. Such money would set him up for life, allow him to travel, to donate generously to causes he believed in. He could even buy conservation land elsewhere. "Take some time to consider," Victoria suggested, handing him a business card. "This offer expires in 48 hours. After she left, Ethan sat on his porch, the card heavy in his hand. The rational part of his mind calculated all he could do with $8 million. The emotional part reminded him of his promise to the forest. That night, he dreamed of the sacred tree. In the dream, he stood before it, watching as bulldozers tore through the forest behind him. With each fallen tree, the light inside the sacred oak dimmed. Animals fled in terror, their cries echoing in his ears. When he turned back to the oak, it was withering, the carvings inside turning to dust. He woke with a gasp, sweat-soaked despite the cold. The amulet burned against his skin, not painfully but insistently. Without thinking, he reached for his phone and called Jessica. "I need to go to the tree," he told her when she answered groggily. "Now, can you come?" An hour later, they stood in the clearing, which was eerily silent. No animals watched from the shadows. No mist swirled at the edges. The sacred oak seemed dimmer somehow, less vital. Ethan approached slowly, the leather pouch of herbs William had given him in his hand. Following the elder's instructions, he lit the herbs with a match, letting the fragrant smoke rise into the cold night air. "I seek guidance," he said in Blackfeet, the unfamiliar words feeling right on his tongue. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then gradually, the familiar mist began to gather, swirling around the base of the tree before rising to form the shape of the spirit they had seen before. "Guardian," the spirit acknowledged, "you face a choice. They've offered me money to abandon this place," Ethan explained. "A lot of money." The spirit's expression remained neutral. "And what do you seek from me?" Ethan hesitated. "Guidance, I suppose. Reassurance. I cannot tell you what to choose. That is the nature of being guardian. The choice must be yours, freely made." Frustration welled in Ethan's chest. "Then what guidance can you offer?" The spirit gestured around the clearing. "Look around you. What do you see?" Ethan obeyed, turning slowly. The clearing appeared empty, devoid of the animals that had gathered before. There's nothing here." "Because they are waiting," the spirit explained, "waiting to see if the new guardian will honor his promise or succumb to the temptations that have turned so many humans away from the old ways." Jessica stepped forward. "It's not just about the money, is it? It's about trust." The spirit nodded. "For centuries, the spirits and animals have watched humans destroy what they promised to protect. Promises broken, agreements forgotten. Few remember the old ways now. Fewer still honor them. What happens if I take the money and leave?" Ethan asked quietly. "Another will be chosen, eventually. But each betrayal makes the veil between realms thicker, the connection harder to maintain. There may come a time when no guardian can be found, when the spirits retreat entirely from the human world." The implications settled heavily on Ethan's shoulders. This wasn't just about one forest, one development. It was about something far larger, the fraying connection between humanity and the natural world. A connection that once severed might never be restored. As if reading his thoughts, the spirit spoke again. "There have been many guardians before you, many choices made. Some chose as you must now choose, others did not. But know this, once the choice is made, there is no returning to what was before. The path will be irrevocably altered." With those words, the spirit began to fade, the mist dispersing until only the ancient oak remained, its hollow interior dark and silent. Ethan turned to Jessica, her face pale in the moonlight. "I need to think." The next day passed in quiet contemplation. Ethan walked his property, sat by the stream where he'd first found Scout, stood at the edge of the forest watching for any sign of Luna. But the animals remained hidden, waiting for his decision. Jessica came by in the evening, her expression serious. "Have you decided?" "I think so," Ethan replied, gesturing for her to sit beside him on the porch steps. "But I wanted to talk to you first." He took a deep breath. "If I refuse their offer, if I stay and become whatever this guardian is supposed to be, it's a lifetime commitment, and it might affect more than just me." Jessica studied his face. "You're wondering how I feel about it?" "Yes, because whatever path I choose, I'd like you to be part of it." He reached for her hand. "These past months, working together, getting to know you, it's been the most alive I've felt since Sarah passed. I don't want to lose that." Soft smile spread across Jessica's face. "Ethan Mitchell, are you asking me to join you on this crazy, supernatural journey?" "I guess I am." He laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "Not exactly the traditional way to start a relationship. Nothing about us has been traditional." She squeezed his hand. "But the answer is yes. Whatever you decide, I'm with you." Relief washed over him. "Then I know what I have to do." The following morning, Victoria Chambers returned precisely at the 48-hour mark, her smile confident as she stepped onto Ethan's porch with a contract in hand. "Have you made your decision, Mr. Mitchell?" Ethan nodded, feeling calmer than he had in days. "I have. My answer is no." Victoria's smile faltered. "Perhaps you don't understand the magnitude of what we're offering. $8 million is a lot of money," Ethan acknowledged. "But this land, this forest, it's not mine to sell. I'm just its caretaker." "That's a romantic notion, Mr. Mitchell, but legally, my decision is final." Ethan's voice was firm. "And you can tell Westridge that we'll be filing for permanent, protected status for the entire valley based on its cultural and ecological significance. The University of Montana and the Blackfeet Nation are supporting our petition." Victoria's professional facade cracked, anger flashing in her eyes. "You're making a mistake. Westridge doesn't take opposition lightly." "Neither do I," Ethan replied evenly, "or the friends I've made here." As if on cue, a sound came from the forest edge, the distinctive call of a lynx. Victoria startled, her gaze darting to where Luna stood in plain sight, her golden eyes fixed on the corporate executive. "You might want to leave now," Ethan suggested mildly. "The wildlife around here can be quite protective." After Victoria's SUV disappeared down the drive, Jessica emerged from inside the cabin where she'd been listening. "Think they'll back off?" "Not without a fight," Ethan admitted, "but neither will we." That night, as snow continued to fall, Ethan and Jessica returned to the sacred tree. This time, the clearing was alive with animals. Lynxes, wolves, bears, and birds gathered in solemn assembly. Scout sat at the front, his blind eyes somehow seeming to track their movement. The spirit appeared without being summoned, forming from the mist that perpetually surrounded the ancient oak. "You have made your choice," the spirit observed. "I have," Ethan confirmed. "I choose to stay, to protect this land and honor the old agreements." The spirit's form seemed to solidify slightly, becoming more distinct. "And you?" it asked, turning to Jessica. "I choose to stand with him," she answered without hesitation. A ripple of what might have been approval passed through the assembled animals. The spirit raised a translucent hand, and the hollow of the tree illuminated with blue light. "Then let it be witnessed by all present. The guardian has chosen, and his choice has been accepted." The lynx amulet at Ethan's throat suddenly grew warm, then hot, the sensation spreading through his body like liquid fire. He gasped, dropping to his knees as energy coursed through him. Beside him, Jessica experienced the same, her eyes wide with wonder rather than pain. "What's happening?" she managed to ask. "The bond is being sealed," the spirit explained. "What was separate is becoming whole." The sensation peaked, then subsided, leaving both of them breathless but exhilarated. As Ethan's vision cleared, he noticed something extraordinary. The forest around them seemed more vibrant, more alive. He could hear the heartbeats of the animals, smell scents that had been too subtle before, feel the life force flowing through the trees. "Your senses will be heightened. Now," the spirit told them, "you will see and hear what others cannot, feel what others ignore. This is the gift of the guardian and those who share their path." "And our responsibility?" Ethan asked, helping Jessica to her feet. "To protect the balance, to remember the old ways, to teach those who have forgotten." The spirit gestured to the carvings inside the tree, "and to add your own promises to those made before." From the shadows, Luna approached, carrying something in her mouth. She dropped it at Ethan's feet, a small carving knife with an antler handle, ancient but well preserved. "It is time to make your mark," the spirit said, "to carve your promise into the living memory of the forest." Ethan picked up the knife, its weight comfortable in his hand as if made for him. With Jessica beside him, he approached the sacred tree, understanding instinctively what was required. Their journey as guardians had truly begun, but the greatest challenges still lay ahead. As Ethan raised the knife to the waiting wood, he could feel the watching eyes of both the physical and spirit realms, all waiting to see if these new guardians would succeed where others had failed, if the ancient bond between humans and nature could be restored in a world that had all but forgotten it. Spring came to Pinecrest Valley with explosive vigor. Wildflowers carpeted the forest floor in vibrant purples and yellows. Trees burst with tender green leaves, and the streams ran full and clear with snowmelt. For Ethan and Jessica, the transformation was more than just visual. They experienced it with their enhanced senses, feeling the surge of life force through every growing thing. 3 months had passed since their initiation as guardians, months filled with learning, adaptation, and challenges. William Blackhawk had become a regular visitor, teaching them Blackfeet traditions, helping them understand their new abilities, guiding them through ancient rituals that strengthened their connection to the land. Their relationship had deepened. Jessica moving into Ethan's cabin as winter gave way to spring. Together, they established new routines: dawn walks to check the boundaries of their protected territory, evening rituals at the sacred tree, midnight conversations with Luna and Scout, whose thoughts they could now sense, if not quite hear. The legal battle with Westridge development continued, but with diminishing intensity. The archaeological survey had confirmed the cultural significance of the site, leading to temporary protected status. Environmental studies documented the unusual concentration of wildlife, particularly the thriving population of lynxes that had been declining elsewhere in Montana. But even as one threat receded, Ethan sensed others on the horizon. His dreams had become vivid, prophetic, visions of challenges to come, tests of their guardianship that would require more than legal maneuvers to overcome. One bright May morning, as they shared coffee on the porch, Jessica noticed his distant expression. "Another dream?" she asked softly. Ethan nodded, water rising, torrents of it washing through the valley. "I could feel the land's pain, hear the trees crying out." Jessica frowned. "That doesn't make sense. We're nowhere near a floodplain, and the snowmelt is already subsiding." "I know, but these dreams, they've all meant something so far." He rubbed the Lynx amulet absently. "I think we should talk to William." Later that day, the Blackfeet elder examined county maps spread across Ethan's kitchen table, his weathered finger tracing the contours of the surrounding mountains. "There was a great flood here once," he said finally. "Long before white settlers. When my people first came to these lands, the spirits show you old memories, perhaps." Ethan shook his head. "It felt immediate. Present or future, not past." William's expression grew thoughtful. "There is another possibility. Westridge may have been denied their resort, but there are other ways to develop land." He pointed to a location several miles upstream. "This area was being considered for a dam project years ago to provide hydroelectric power and create a recreational lake. The plans were shelved, but with the increasing demand for clean energy, could they really revive that project? Jessica asked. The environmental impact would be enormous. Different regulations for essential infrastructure, William explained, and a dam would be under federal jurisdiction, not county. The protections we've secured might not apply. Ethan felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. That's it. They're going to flood the valley another way. We need to confirm this before we act, Jessica cautioned, ever the scientist despite her embrace of their spiritual path. Let me make some calls, check the public records. By evening, their fears were confirmed. Northwest Power Consortium, a subsidiary of Westridge's parent company, had quietly filed preliminary permits for a hydroelectric dam that would create a 5-mile-long lake, submerging most of the protected forest, including the sacred tree. They're calling it green energy, Jessica reported grimly, hanging up from her call with a contact at the Environmental Protection Agency, claiming it will reduce the region's carbon footprint while providing recreational opportunities that will boost the local economy and conveniently destroy exactly the land they couldn't get through conventional development, Ethan added bitterly. How do we fight this? William, who had stayed to hear Jessica's findings, raised a gnarled hand. Not how, but who. The spirits did not enhance your senses and abilities simply to file more paperwork, young guardians. The old ways involved more direct communication with those who threatened the balance. What are you suggesting? Jessica asked. A smile creased William's lined face. I am suggesting that it is time to remind humans why my people respected and feared the forest spirits. Time to show them that nature is not passive in the face of destruction. That night, under a waxing moon, Ethan and Jessica stood before the sacred tree, surrounded by more animals than they had ever seen gathered in one place. Not just the usual lynxes, wolves, and bears, but elk, deer, eagles, hawks, foxes, badgers, representatives of every species that called the forest home. Following William's instructions, they performed the ritual of awakening, an ancient ceremony meant to thin the veil between realms and call forth the full power of the forest spirits. As they spoke the Blackfeet words, burning sacred herbs and offering drops of their own blood to the roots of the tree, the air grew dense with energy. The mist that typically accompanied spiritual manifestations became something more substantial, swirling. Clouds that formed and reformed into humanoid shapes, animal forms, patterns of leaves and branches, all flowing together in constant motion. The blue light from the hollow tree intensified until it illuminated the entire clearing like daylight. And then, from the heart of the light, emerged not just the familiar spirit guide they had communicated with before, but dozens of spirits, ancestral, guardians, animal totems, elemental forces that had protected the land since time immemorial. You have called the council, their guide acknowledged. This is not done lightly. We face a threat that could destroy everything, Ethan explained. They plan to flood the valley, submerge the sacred tree, drown the forest. The assembled spirits conferred in whispers that sounded like wind through autumn leaves. Finally, their guide turned back to them. Such destruction cannot be permitted. The balance would suffer beyond repair. The spirit's form solidified further, becoming almost tangible. We will act, but we require vessels, bridges between the spirit realm and the physical world. Underseeds, Jessica stepped forward without hesitation. We offer ourselves. Be certain, the spirit cautioned, to channel such power is to be forever changed. The human and spirit worlds will blend within you in ways that cannot be undone. Ethan joined Jessica, taking her hand. We're certain. We chose this path knowing it would transform us. The spirit nodded, then raised both hands. The mist swirled faster, converging on Ethan and Jessica, entering their bodies through every breath. The sensation was overwhelming, like liquid lightning flowing through their veins, ancient memories flooding their minds, power thrumming beneath their skin. But when it ended, they remained outwardly unchanged, yet fundamentally transformed. They could see the energy flows of the land, hear the thoughts of every living creature around them, feel the pulse of the earth beneath their feet, as if it were their own heartbeat. "It is done," the spirit announced. "You are now true guardians, both human and spirit, both physical and ethereal. Use this power wisely to restore the balance." Over the next weeks, strange occurrences plagued the dam project. Surveying equipment malfunctioned inexplicably. Workers reported disorienting experiences in the forest, voices calling their names, paths that shifted and changed, animals that seemed to watch them with unsettling intelligence. Heavy machinery broke down, computerized systems crashed, geological assessments yielded contradictory results. Each night, Ethan and Jessica returned to the sacred tree to confer with the spirits and plan their next moves. They learned to project dreams to the dam project's key decision-makers, visions of destruction and consequence that left the recipients shaken and doubtful. They called fog to obscure construction sites, summoned wildlife to create strategic disruptions, channeled the forest's energy to subtly influence emotions and decisions. Their most powerful ally proved to be Scout, the blind Lynx, whose connection to the spirit realm was naturally stronger than other animals. Through him, they could project their consciousness anywhere in the valley, see through his unique perception that transcended physical sight. Yet for all their spiritual interventions, they didn't neglect practical action. Jessica used her scientific credentials to challenge the environmental impact statements. Ethan leveraged media connections to bring public attention to the project's flaws. William mobilized tribal opposition based on cultural heritage protection. The confrontation reached its climax on a stormy June night when Northwest Power executives arrived for a secret midnight meeting at the proposed dam site. Their plan, as Scout had discovered while prowling their temporary offices, was to begin preliminary construction immediately, creating a situation where it would be too costly and complicated to turn back. As lightning split the sky and thunder rolled across the mountains, Ethan and Jessica stood on the ridge overlooking the site, their forms shimmering with barely contained spiritual energy. "Are we ready for this?" Jessica asked, her voice carrying harmonics that weren't entirely human. "We'll be revealing ourselves completely." Ethan nodded, the Lynx amulet glowing like a small sun against his chest. "They've left us no choice. Some things must be seen to be believed and feared." Together they raised their hands toward the storm clouds. The gesture taught to them by William was both invocation and channeling, drawing down the raw power of the storm and directing it with precision. Lightning responded, striking not randomly, but in a deliberate pattern around the meeting site, forming ancient Blackfeet symbols of warning and power. The wind rose to a howl, carrying their amplified voices. "This land is protected. Those who threaten it will face the Guardian's wrath." From the forest emerged hundreds of animals, moving in coordinated patterns impossible in nature, their eyes glowing with reflected spiritual energy. Luna led the lynxes, Scout at her side. Wolves flanked them. Bears rose on hind legs behind. Eagles and hawks circled overhead. The executives and workers fled to their vehicles in terror, but found the access road blocked by fallen trees that hadn't been there an hour before. As they huddled together, Ethan and Jessica appeared before them, materializing from mist, their forms translucent yet undeniably present. "You have been warned," Ethan's voice resonated with otherworldly power. "This valley is sacred, its guardians awakened. Abandon your plans, or what you have witnessed tonight will be but a whisper of what follows." "We are not your enemies," Jessica added, her hair floating in an ethereal breeze. We protect the balance that sustains all life, including yours. Choose another path. There are better ways to create the future you seek. With those words, they dissolved back into mist, the storm subsided, and the animals retreated silently into the forest. The road cleared itself, allowing the shaken executives to leave with a story so incredible, none would dare report it officially. Yet so terrifying, none could forget. 2 days later, Northwest Power Consortium announced the indefinite suspension of the dam project, citing unexpected geological complications and cultural considerations. Within weeks, they sold their interests in the region entirely, focusing their energy development efforts on wind farms in Wyoming and solar arrays in Nevada. Westridge Development, facing financial pressures and public relations challenges, eventually agreed to a land swap arranged by a conservation trust, exchanging their holdings in Pinecrest Valley for more accessible property near a developed resort area. By late summer, the threats had passed. The valley was officially designated a protected wilderness and cultural heritage site, jointly managed by state conservation authorities and the Blackfeet Nation, with Ethan and Jessica serving as live-in caretakers. Their transformation continued to evolve. The blend of human and spirit that the ritual had created within them deepened, granting new abilities while drawing them further from ordinary human experience. They could communicate with animals without words, influence weather patterns, accelerate plant growth, see energy fields invisible to others, yet they remained firmly connected to the human world. Jessica continued her veterinary practice, focusing on wildlife rehabilitation. Ethan began teaching wilderness appreciation courses for school groups and training conservation officers in tracking techniques. Together, they quietly identified and mentored others who showed sensitivity to the spirit realm, potential future guardians to continue their work when necessary. William visited regularly, both to teach and to learn, documenting traditions that had nearly been lost and witnessing new elements of the human-spirit partnership that even tribal legends hadn't anticipated. One golden September evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in fiery hues, Scout emerged from the forest alone. The blind lynx, now fully grown and powerful, approached with unusual solemnity, carrying something in his mouth. He dropped it at their feet. A small carved wooden figure depicting two humans with animal companions standing before a great tree. The craftsmanship was exquisite, impossibly detailed for its size. Another gift from the spirits? Jessica wondered, lifting it carefully. Ethan smiled, recognizing the energy signature in the carving. No, this one's from Scout himself. He's been learning from the spirit artisans. Scout made a sound that was partly purr, partly something else, a vocalization that carried clear meaning to their enhanced perception: pride, accomplishment, family. Jessica laughed in delight. You made this yourself? It's beautiful. She reached out to stroke his head, receiving a surge of affection in return. As twilight deepened, Luna and several other lynxes emerged to join them, followed by a family of wolves, a young bear, and various smaller creatures, all settling around the porch in peaceful communion. The boundaries between human space and wildlife territory had blurred, just as the boundaries between physical and spiritual had blurred within the Guardians themselves. I never imagined my retirement would look like this, Ethan mused, watching an eagle land on their roof with casual familiarity. Jessica leaned against his shoulder. Having regrets? Not a single one. He touched the amulet, feeling the warm pulse of connection it represented. We found something most people spend their lives searching for: purpose, meaning, true partnership with each other and the world around us. And a very unusual family, she added, gesturing to the assembled animals. Scout made another sound, this one unmistakably smug, as if to say, "Of course. What did you expect when you saved one of us?" The blind Lynx's communication sparked something in Ethan's memory, a fragment of the original vision that had led him to scout that cold autumn day. The circle was complete now, yet also just beginning. What had started with a simple act of compassion had rippled outward, restoring an ancient balance, awakening forgotten connections, creating something entirely new. As stars appeared in the darkening sky, Ethan and Jessica rose together, walking hand in hand toward the forest where the sacred tree awaited their evening communion with the spirits. Their path glowed softly with bioluminescent fungi that had begun to appear throughout their territory, another sign of the unique energy balance they maintained. Behind them followed their animal family, and above them flew night birds whose calls carried messages between distant parts of the valley. The forest itself seemed to breathe around them, alive and aware in ways that science couldn't measure, but the heart could feel. They were guardians now, not just of a place, but of a possibility, a different way of being, of remembering what the modern world had forgotten, of restoring balance between what was separated long ago, one heart, one choice, one connection at a time. And as they reached the sacred tree, where spiritual light welcomed them home, they knew with absolute certainty that their greatest adventures still lay ahead. Dear listeners, we hope that Ethan and Luna's story has touched your heart. The bond between humans and nature is both mysterious and powerful, and sometimes, if we listen closely enough, the wilderness speaks to us in ways we never imagined possible. If this tale of guardianship and sacred connections resonated with you, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories about unexpected spiritual journeys. Find it by clicking to your left. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give the video a thumbs up. Every day, we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and our connection to the natural world. Don't miss our upcoming content. We're waiting to hear your thoughts in the comments.